Hey everyone, Sage Tune from Esports Illustrated over here. I am joined by James Patterson following the LCS Spring Finals here in Raleigh, North Carolina. So first thing, I just wanted to catch up with you, ask you how everything has been. What was it like to be able to just walk onto that stage to a sea of a crowd and be back in, like, I guess, the LCS community in this type of capacity?
Yeah, I mean, pretty special, right? Just to try and answer it quickly. For me, there is nothing greater than the live events when it comes to esports sports performance, right? In general, entertainment is maybe a better word than performance. And it's in a lot of ways why I do my job. I do my job for the real life connection that it draws between people. If I was doing all of this in isolation, it wouldn't be very fun, right? And actually, we had the pandemic to kind of prove that. It was a lot less fun, right, when we were doing it from our bedrooms, and I couldn't see the effect that not just me, but the whole product is having on the people who are consuming it, right? And by the same token, like I say, to be able to connect with people around a shared passion. That for me, being able to step back into this arena and to see smiling faces, to see cosplayers, to see people with faces painted and big signs and jerseys that are 10 years old, but they've held on to because that's, you know, that they've been a fan of that team or that player since the beginning. Like, that to me is what it's all about. And so, without a doubt, it's one of the most special things for me to be able to return to a live event, you know, from Worlds to here, and hopefully further on in the future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I want to ask just now, 2023 as a whole, you know, maybe some of the reflections going into your 2023 season for yourself. What were some of the things that you were thinking about, what was going through your mind? Because you had talked about how acting was something that you had wanted to pursue before, but then I guess I just wanted to get in your head about, like, what made you want to continue with esports?
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Loaded question. Because I think it's no surprise to people that, like, the transition from 2022 to 23 was pretty tumultuous time for me, with stepping away from the LCS. Not of my choosing. No fun way to say that. Acting is always there. It's always something I want to do, and it will always be my first passion. I've never kept that a secret. The reality with acting is that acting is a lot like esports, but maybe a little bit more so, something you have zero control over. I have no control over when the right role or the right opportunity will present itself for me to take hold of. And so while acting is always something that is top of mind, that I have, you know, eyes all around me, you know, trying to look for those opportunities to pursue that creative endeavor and passion, esports is the thing that has sustained me for the last decade. So this isn't a very good answer, a very coherent answer to your question, and I think that actually in some ways is representative of what's been going on in my brain throughout the beginning of 2023, because I ended up in a position that I didn't expect to be in. It has been difficult for me to navigate because I have this deep, undying love for League of Legends and the LCS, but I would be lying to you if I said it wasn't tremendously difficult to not be a part of it week in and week out. Right, that is a massive shift in my life. I spent every waking hour playing this game, talking about this game, and going and telling the stories of this league to people for 10 years, and I've lost a piece of that, and that's definitely difficult. But to then take the more, you know, maybe positive approach to all of that, it has forced me in very much the same way that I found myself in this job to try to be open to what other opportunities will arise as a result, right? I didn't expect to ever be an esports host, right? I wanted to be an actor. That was my intention. And then someone said, well, hey, what about this other thing? And off I went. And how cool, right? And how special this last decade has been. So in very much the same way, I'm trying to find kind of that positive spin to the situation where I'm at now, that while maybe I've had to say goodbye to something a little bit before I'm ready, it does mean that I have space in my life to maybe find something new and fulfilling, or at least when that thing crosses my path, that I can jump on it. The same way I did when someone in a bar in New York said, "Hey, have you ever thought about working at Riot?" And so maybe someone at a bar in LA will say, "Hey, have you ever thought about acting in a movie? Or have you ever thought about voicing a video game character?" Or whatever it is, right? And I will say yes. And how serendipitous that I happen to have the time. So that's kind of where I'm at. It's a day-by-day thing. Like I said, I'd be lying if I said every day was sunshine and rainbows right now for me. But that's life, right?
Yeah.
Can't be all ups.
Definitely not. I mean, ups wouldn't feel as great if there weren't periods where there were downs, right? Like
Precisely.
that. I want to actually ask you about just from the mental aspect of when you do go through change and eventually get to that point where you experience those ups again. When you experience those ups again, I guess, how do you go from, that period where it's like, oh my gosh, this is a lot of change for me? Do you have a certain system or process where you spend a bit of time to reflect first and then think about, okay, what are the action steps I can take? Do you have a certain system for it, or has it just been like always an adaptation on your end?
Oh God, no, I wish I did. I think things would be so much easier if I had a system, right? And maybe this will be the thing that spurs me into like, let's develop a system for the future. When I was young, when I was a teenager, college age, I had all these grand plans my whole life, right? I think a lot of us had that, right? It was like, I know, some of us did, not all of us did, but some of us very much were like, I know what my life is going to turn out to be. I'm going to graduate, I'll get this job, I'll get married at this age, I'll have these kids, I'll get a house here, I'll do whatever. And like I said, when I found this job at Riot, it threw all of that out the window, in the best of ways, right? It taught me at a very young age, at the age of 22, 23, that not a single person's life goes exactly to plan, but that the important thing is your openness to the reality of your situation. So acceptance is definitely a big piece of it, as you're kind of like in terms of steps. Like we are going to talk about steps. Like acceptance, I think, is actually one of the biggest pieces. Accepting your given circumstances. If you cannot accept the environment and the circumstances that you are in, the reality of your situation, then you can't ever build that plan, right? Like how do you even get to step 2 if you don't know where you are in step 1? And that to me is kind of what acceptance means. And so, like I said, I think right now that's still kind of the stage where I'm at. I'm still having to grapple with the fact that I'm not doing the thing that I had just dedicated 1/3 of my life to doing. That's a big shift. But I think when I finally get to that point of acceptance with like, okay, this is where I'm at, then I can start to look at what levers can I pull and what levers can I not pull? What can I change? What can't I change? Right? And the things that I can't change, here they go. They go over here. Because any energy spent towards things I cannot change, that's wasted energy. And it's only going to drag me down. It's only going to hurt me in the long run. And then I get to bring these things over here into the center, and I get to focus on these. And so I think that if I had to kind of bring some kind of like a general life philosophy to dealing with emotion, hardship, or anything like that, that is generally what I would lean into, is a fairly pragmatic approach. And so yeah, right now I'm still kind of in this stage, acceptance, and then I can move to push the stuff to the side, and I can focus on all of this, and out of that something brilliant will hopefully unfold.
And it's definitely, like you were saying, you're in that period just of acceptance, and then, but because of just your previous experiences before where you were in New York, that person in the bar just approaches you and asks you, hey, what about Riot Games? Do you feel like, no matter what roadblocks or obstacles I do face in my career, or maybe even in my life, I will always be able to push through it?
Yes, I do. But I think that is something that I think is intrinsic to me as a person. I think even when I was a kid, my parents would probably tell you like, oh, what a precocious little asshole he was. Not shy, loved the spotlight, okay with getting knocked down, he's gonna try again, kind of a thing. So absolutely. But in that same vein, right, like that idea, I think what it comes down to is like, again, we've worked through this into this, whatever. That gives you a level of openness so that right now I don't think I'm open to somebody coming up to me in a bar and saying, right? And I think that's the barrier right now, right? Is like you have to get to a place where when an opportunity does present itself to you, your first instinct isn't no. That doesn't fit my ideal. That's because I'm still holding on to this other thing, right? And it doesn't fit, or it doesn't give me the exact feeling that one thing used to give me. But again, once you can get past that, then I think you're more free to be open to, the random person on the street who says, you look just like this character from this book, and I'm making a movie about it. Like, well, shit, let's go, so.
Yeah, that makes sense. I want to transition a bit into just the new game that you have been working on, which is a lot of VALORANT work where you are doing hosting things. An interview previously with Invent Global, you had highlighted how you had always wanted to be able to proclaim and say, I am the best host in the world. Do you feel like VALORANT at least be able to help you kind of reach that type of goal in your own career?
I think definitely. Although I will say I don't think that somebody needs to host in multiple spheres to be considered the best at what they do, right? Because actually, if you look at most traditional sports hosts, traditional television hosts, most of them, they find their one job, they do it for 30 years, they do it brilliantly, right? And that's their career. And maybe the way media is changing is that's not so much possible anymore. The nature of the speed at which technology and media develops maybe makes that less of a thing. But I would have liked to have been able to say that, like, I could have, hosted this for 20 years and been the best. I think what it does do, right? So I guess what I'm saying is that just by virtue of moving to VALORANT and hosting another game, I don't think that does anything, in my opinion, to aid me or to necessarily, like, let's say there's a council voting, right, to sway people to vote, Dash is the best host in the world. What I will say it does is it presents me the opportunity to run into obstacles and hurdles that will force me to grow in ways that maybe I wouldn't have here, or at least not at the same rate. Because when you do work, and most people can probably attest to this, if you do the same activity in the same environment, same circumstances over and over and over again, yes, you'll marginally improve from repetition and things like that. But at a certain point, you're going to plateau, or at least, start to hit diminishing returns. You go jump into another sport that has different terminology, a completely different genre of game, has different producers, different casters, different pro players, right? Different energy, different demographic watching it, all kinds of stuff, right? Now you've got to grapple with all these things that you haven't had to work with before, and maybe a technique that worked for you in League is not going to work for you in VALORANT, right? Maybe just the general approach or feel of the show in League is not the same as it is in VALORANT, and you have to grow more quickly in order to hang on, in order to, so in that regard, I would say yes. Like, I do think by virtue of moving to another esport and being forced to work in a different environment with different people, absolutely will make me a better host at a faster rate.
Mm-hmm. Might I ask you, because you do catch me as someone that's very ambitious with your own goals and always looking at how you can become better. When you did make that switch into VALORANT, what was that big hurdle that you noticed that, well, okay, I never thought I would ever run into this type of problem, and then how did you move forward and kind of tackle that and then be able to move from it?
Good question. Couple things. I'll do two things. First thing, which is maybe the bigger thing, is just the general aura and feeling of VALORANT, right? Like, it is a different sport. It is a different demographic. Shooters have a different energy, right? And I think that alone was difficult for me to shake, because again, 10 years of building a persona. Like, I am me up there, but I'm also a
Almost a character. Like,
yeah, exactly. I'm a little bit of a caricature of me, right? Or I'm at least picking and choosing the parts of myself that I will exaggerate
enhanced version.
or enhance, right? Anything like that on the stage. And I spent, again, 10 years crafting what felt right for League of Legends, or at least what felt right for our broadcast and the image that we were going for. You go over to Valorant and they're like, you're not wearing suits anymore. You're wearing T-shirts and cut-up sweatshirts, and we're gonna. I mean, all this stuff I love. Don't get me wrong, because I like to put colors in my hair and all kinds of stuff. But like to have that permission was one thing, but then an entirely different thing to then step onto stage and actually bring that person with me, right? Because I would find that obviously I sit in that seat at the end of the table, or at the center of the table in Valorant as the host, and I want to start doing it the way I do it in League. And I have to remind myself, I'm like, look behind you, dude. You got guys standing up and yelling at each other, after they get an ace or a big 1v1 kill or something like that. This is a different feeling. You've got to match that feeling. And so I think that was one of the biggest hurdles alone, just different environment and matching the energy and the feeling of that space. One of the other things I will say is more of a technical thing, which is just the pace at which they move in Valorant is very different, like in the broadcast itself, but also the control, I don't know if that's the right word, but I'll use it. The control that the analysts and the host have versus the control that the analysts and the host have here. So at least initially in League, my whole career in League, we've had a lot of control over what the segments look like, right? We call for all the replays, we ask for graphics to be built, and we make the request as to what will be on them. And then our incredible team behind the scenes goes and whips all this up in the middle of the game, right? Actively, while we're asking for it. We're saying, start the replay here, cut it here, add that play, get this triple kill, pull full screen stats of this guy, blah, blah, blah. In Valorant, at least in the initial years that it's been running, we go up there and the segments it's so fast moving, a 2-minute halftime, and they actually time bucket you 2 minutes. So it's like, we don't really have time to call for something and ask for it. So basically, they just pull an asset and they go, we have a full screen for you of this, and the producer just tells me this is coming, right? And now I have to figure out a way to put it in the show. This guy's talking about something else entirely, but the analyst one, I'm just pointing to random analysts, right, is talking about X player, but producer says we're going to fly a graphic of player Y. Well, what the heck? We're talking about player X. So that was a really interesting technical challenge for me to figure out how to move conversations to match someone else's outline, as opposed to build the outline myself with my analysts, and they follow along, right? And so that, just as a technical hurdle, was very interesting.
No, I mean, it's really interesting. I think it's been really cool to just see you navigate this very different period in your career. I just want to give you the floor to speak to the LCS League fans before yourself, and then any closing remarks that you wanted to say.
I appreciate that. Which camera? Straight to single?
Right.
Oh man, what can I say without breaking down in tears? I'll say, I think, what I've said many times in an interview, but I still mean just as much as the first time I said it. I'm just so grateful to be such a small piece of something that is so big, right? When you talk about esports, there still is nothing that can even come close to dwarfing League of Legends. And for me to have stumbled my way into this esport in unspectacular fashion, but to have found a home in it is something that I will never forget. And specifically to the fans here in Raleigh, and actually at home as well, who have shown their support via the interwebs. I didn't know how much it would mean to step back into this space and to have people show me an appreciation for the work that I do or have done for this league, even while I haven't been here for the majority of the split. And so I thank you for your graciousness in allowing me to be a part of this wonderful community and this wonderful sport. And I hope it's not the last. I look forward to the next time.